Welcome to Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. Here we explore what it means to reconnect with your essence and live from a place of personal freedom. If you're interested in learning more about our courses, mentoring and workshops, feel free to visit wayoftheheart.com.au. We're so glad you're here and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Welcome back, legends, to another episode of Heart Riffing, a podcast by Way of the Heart. That's us, Way of the Heart. Spirit fingers. Yeah. So we thought we'd just launch in today with a topic that has kind of come up through someone giving us some feedback and circling back and asking some questions. And really, this whole episode we want to dedicate to this idea of what happens when there's big areas of my life that I could look at and I go, yeah, I'm really living out of my heart there. I'm centered, I'm grounded, I'm turning up, I'm fully engaged with all my heart, and that is just fantastic. And then you go, okay, and then there's this part of my life, which, I don't feel like it's safe to live out of my heart here, or I go into this environment and I constantly get knocked off my own personal axis. I kind of lose my inner heart posture and I find I'm getting into my head and getting anxious, or I'm getting into my emotions and getting reactive, or I'm getting into my ego and starting to become competitive, or I'm just feeling like this whole space is depressing and exhausting and, and it's not working for me. So a lot of your life can be heart-centered and going great, and then there's a part of your life where you feel like, no, I'm just not there. I know I'm not living out of my heart in that particular space. So we thought we'd just riff about what that feels like, what are some of the challenges in that space, and what are some of the things you do. We're not promising you 5 points in how to move through that. Because
unless you buy the course, and then you got your 5.
Yeah, and our 5 points always end up being 10 anyway in 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to talk about today. Hey, Jess, you going good?
Yeah, I'm going good.
Okay.
I'm really glad we're talking about this topic because I have felt it so poignantly for myself.
Oh, you want to resign from Way of the Heart?
That's it. Yeah, that.
There's a CEO role running. If anyone needs,
anyone wants to be the CEO of a startup, hit us up. No, I don't know. I feel like I can relate to this point more in understanding what it feels like to have one area of your life that feels incongruent.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you might have that awareness, but you're also holding that intention with the understanding that, well, there are some logistical things that need to be done in order for me to live, kind of thing. And I feel like when we talk about this topic, when we talk about the one area where you feel like you're not living out of your heart, you're not living, in congruence with who you are, that is always excused by some type of attachment. Like, I need to be
specific. What do you mean by an attachment?
As in, like, that's a good question.
Like the attachment to pay the bills.
Yes. Or the attachment to keep the relationship going for the kids.
Yeah.
Or to, I don't know, some people, it might not even be something practical.
Not disappoint the parents.
Yeah. Or it might be, an attachment to playing a particular role, being the martyr.
Yeah. Okay. So being locked into this kind of person that you've always turned up as, and
yeah, absolutely.
This is the social expectation almost.
Yeah.
Or this is just the role I play.
Totally. Yeah. So it's funny because whenever we look at this and there's that one area that's, that's out of alignment, that never comes alone. Like that always comes with a whole host of reasons as to why that area can't be fixed or
that's a really good point. So we could say in another way that being out of alignment never exists in a vacuum. It exists because something's feeding it, either an attachment or a narrative, or what I mean by narrative, a story that someone's telling themselves about why it needs to be like this, why this is not negotiable. Mm-hmm. Is that what you...
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think so, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true for me too. I think that's completely true for me. I think that you in the areas where I've felt in the past where I haven't been living out of my heart, a lot of the time, um, in hindsight, I could go back and go, oh yeah, I wasn't negotiable on that point,
Mm.
or I had so much fear about what would happen if I stopped doing that, um, that there was no way I was going to stop, because it was like, if I stop now,
Everything falls apart.
well, it's a bit like riding in the Tour de France, and you're hanging on the back of the peloton going up the Pyrenees, and you just go, I know that I really don't want to be racing anymore. But if I stop pedaling, I'm going to drop off the back. And once I drop off the back, I'm never catching up again.
Right.
It's that, think of that visually, of like being that person hanging on the back of that peloton, pedaling away, hating every pedal, struggling with every pedal, and just going like, I can't be dropped here. I can't be dropped here. If I get dropped here, I'll never catch back up again.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that feeling, and that feels like a monkey on your back. You just got to keep going. You got to keep pedaling. You got to stay on the wheel in front of you.
But this is such a funny thing too, because I think that, with a lot of these things, it kind of creates cognitive dissonance, because on paper, everything can be fine. On paper, it can look like a really good decision. Like, I've been in jobs or relationships where on paper this is fine, but then internally you go, oh, this doesn't fit. This doesn't feel right. And so this is a really tricky thing to lean into. And I feel like not the answer, but I feel like it's a lot more, when talking to people like this or when addressing this issue, it's a lot more complex than just saying, well, you just got to follow your heart, because there's a lot of enmeshment happening there, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're in the Tour de France, or you're in the peloton,
Yeah, for sure.
you've trained hard to.
Yeah, you're part of a team.
Totally.
They don't expect people to be dropped off the back.
Totally.
Right? You're part of a whole ecosystem that expects performance and output, and you're here to perform. You're here to deliver, right? So yes, so there can be that imperative. There can be that feeling like I can't afford to drop the ball here. I remember for me, when I was leaving, institutional religion as a minister, like, I remember going, I don't have any share value outside of this. I can't leave. I got 3 kids in private school. I got a mortgage. I got a wife that, like, I can't drop the ball here. But that really plays into 2 things in my mind. The first one is, if you're feeling it in your heart that you're not there, you're a long way down the track from most people. So the fact that you're feeling it, the fact that you're registering it, what that tells me that you're listening to an inner voice that's telling you this isn't it. Right? Now, the voice that tells you that, and this is, life coaches will tell you this often, people can often register what's not it, because that's a feeling tone. You feel that. And heart energy is a feeling tone. What it's not is it's not a thinking tone, right? So it's not coming with a linear plan of, yes, that's correct, and step 1 is you go and do this and this and this and this, and that sorts out this. So there's no linear kind of logical progression. There's just this awareness of an inner dissonance. You listen to your heart, and your heart just says, this isn't it. You're not living out of me here. And inevitably the voice of the heart is a lot quieter than all the other noisy energies. So you listen, you tune into that little voice that goes, yeah, this is not really working for me. And that comes across as clarity, like genuine clarity. When you listen, when you hear it, you go, oh no, that's clear. That's really clear. What's not clear, because your heart won't give you this, is the blow by blow, step by step project plan that gets you from here to here. And as you and I know, you're going to jump into the liminal, which is, I know I can no longer be here. I don't know what's emerging yet. I've now got to go into this journey of betwixt and between, not here, but not here. Now, the reason we hate that so much is because the mind is just going, well, what about this? Well, what about this? And forget the mind. It could be the partner going, hey, dude, we got kids that got to get fed. We got a mortgage that's got to get paid. We got, what's that song? I got bills. I got to pay. So I gotta work
Every
every
day.
day.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. So you just gotta keep hustling, hustling. I got lots of songs happening at the moment.
I don't even think
I
it's
feel like
hustling. I
feel like
think
Red Foo is in
I
my head.
think it's shuffling,
Just
dude.
shuffling. Shuffling, shuffling. Okay, so yeah, I'm so cool, so with it. Yeah. So, but here's the deal, right? Heart doesn't negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
Your heart won't go, ah, yeah, the bills. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, let's stay here. I'll just be quiet. Because the reality is, you can stay there and your heart will go quiet. But the sense of dissonance, the sense of disconnect, the sense of discomfort in that place won't go away.
Mm.
Um, and people often ask me, like, so how long does it stay uncomfortable for? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, like,
Always.
you know how you think that, like, it's like a dial from 0 to 10? It's not. It's a dial from 0 to 1,000. Like, it just, the discomfort will just keep getting turned up and turned up and turned up and turned up,
Yeah.
um, to the point where to to mute that discomfort or to mute that dissonance, and dissonance is where you hold the microphone too close to the speaker and it all starts to hum. To mute the dissonance, you will have to become something that you're not in order to stay there.
Yeah.
So there will have to be a massive act of betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you said to me, what is the easiest way to shipwreck your life? It's to live in betrayal to your own essence and heart. I mean, that's a great way to ruin a marriage. That's a great way to be a poor parent. That's a great way to be an ineffective employee. Because I kind of think that people only measure the risk from the front end.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've talked about this before. That people only go, uh, well, there's a big risk if I follow my heart. She goes, no, there's actually a bigger risk if you don't.
Yeah.
Measure the risk of not following your heart.
Mm.
That has catastrophic impact on your health, your emotions, your relationships, your capacity to turn up, your capacity to deliver. So the question I'd ask at that point is, if you don't follow this voice, who do you become in order to stay misaligned?
Yeah, and I mean we see this in people everywhere. Like, there are many, many. I won't bring up any examples
Yeah.
because I don't want them to listen, and find out that it's them. But
Yeah.
it is this sort of,
Were you talking about Donald Trump then?
yeah,
Yeah.
was. How
Yeah.
did you
He tunes in regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think too, it's interesting because that there is an inner violence or an inner betrayal
Yeah.
when you're not, listening to your heart. And I think because you're muting it, as you said, it means that you start tuning in everywhere else to try and ease that discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so because you're betraying who you are, you're trying to make up for that by outsourcing your sense of self or outsourcing your sense of achievement or accomplishment to anything else around you that will give it to you.
Yeah.
And then that kind of perpetuates the cycle of
Dysfunction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
it becomes completely dysfunctional.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree. So I think our message is that you tune into the heart, right? Like what happens, and here's an area that I know that I'm not living out of my heart. I mean, that revelation alone for me is gold.
Yeah, totally.
Because you can at least go, oh wow, here's an area of my life. So I feel like you're already ahead of the game because you've heard your heart, you've sensed it, you can identify it, you can go, in this space, I'm misaligned. And for me, that's always a gift, right? Because you're hearing the messages getting through.
Can I talk about a personal example, but I don't know how to resolve it? As in, like, can I say the example? Maybe you tell me what is happening there.
Yeah, sure.
I think that, and I've spoken about this before, but in my experience, I've embodied roles or been in jobs or positions that I knew were not in alignment with my heart or with who I was. And I felt that dissonance really, really strongly. And so I've as a result of that, I've shifted again and again and again to try and find the thing that feels more resonant. Um, and a place for me where that kind of changed and felt a little bit different was when I was working in the tertiary education sector. And from when I started working there, I did have that internal sense that
It,
this isn't it. I know it's not it, but I think when I was in that job, I knew myself a lot more and I had more grounding in who I was. And so the feeling was this isn't it, but this is where I'm supposed to be right now.
yeah,
And this is like being in this job or doing this thing now is going to teach me the lessons that I need, or it's all kind of part of the river. Like it's
yeah,
all kind
yeah,
of part of
yeah,
the curriculum.
yeah,
I need to be here right now. And when it's time to move, I'll move. And I was able to find peace in that, even though I knew it wasn't where I was supposed to ultimately be.
yeah,
I did have a sense that it's not forever, but it is for right now.
yeah,
But kind of what's happening there, because I would say that
yeah.
like externally I wasn't in alignment, but I had an inner sense of
Ease.
yes.
Yeah. So let me ask you a couple of questions. In previous things that you've done,
Mm.
how invested were you in those things as sources of identity?
Oh, probably very, because I don't think that I properly knew myself.
Yeah.
And so I was relying on those as identity.
As an identity marker.
Yeah.
If I can do this, this will tell me this about myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. That completely resonates.
So when you were working in the university doing the learning architecture, how much were you relying on the university to give you a sense of who you were and your identity?
Not at all.
Yeah, great. So the only thing that really shifted is what?
Is where I sourced my identity.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when it was internal, then I felt that inner ease and alignment because I was able to
Because the
discern
university wasn't a threat.
what was my identity and
The
what wasn't.
university had no power to either bestow or withdraw identity.
Totally.
But when the university has power to bestow identity or to withhold identity, then you become dependent on the identity.
Yeah.
You become dependent on the university to give you that thing that you want from it.
Right.
That's the attachment piece, right?
Right. So when you're in a job and you go, this looks really good on paper, but this doesn't feel like me at all, it's because you're recognizing that your identity isn't here
Well, it
at
gets
all.
complex because you might be a dad or you might be a mum and you might have all these things and you go to this job and really the identity piece that you're looking for isn't actually about the job, but it's about what the job gives you. This allows me to pay my bills and I got bills I got to pay. So this is about me being a good dad or a good provider, or it's about being a good a person who meets the needs of my family.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to be responsible. This is it could be something really primary, like this is my identity as a responsible participant in my marriage, in this relationship. It could be something as simple as, I want to be a homeowner and I go to this job and do this thing because at least here I get enough money and I'll be able to buy my unit. You know, if I can save up X amount of dollars, I can get a mortgage and buy a unit, or I can go on that holiday, or whatever it is. And so what really starts to get impacted is your identity within the ecosystem of your lifestyle and the lifestyle that you're sustaining.
Mm.
And so the job actually may not be the primary source of identity, but it might be a resource feeder into your primary source of identity.
Got it.
So then the job becomes non-negotiable, or the relation, or it could even be the relationship. I remember back in, I remember back when I was a pastor, I have, and if this happened once to me, it probably happened maybe 30 times, is that I would meet a woman who'd been married for 15 or 20 years, and she would be a member of my church, and I'd sit down and I'd go, let's call her Ethel. How are you, Ethel? Oh, I'm not going well, Greg. Okay, what's happening? She goes, oh, well, you know that I'm mad at, you know that I'm, Bob. You know what Bob's like? I was like, okay, what's happening with you and Bob? Oh, well, blah, blah, blah. And then she just pillar Bob, you know what I mean? Like, and maybe Bob deserved it. I don't know. I wasn't living in the relationship, you know. And I'd say, well, you know, like, do you think that maybe you and Bob in your marriage, do you think maybe it's run its course? Like, do you love Bob? No, I don't think I love Bob anymore. It's like, okay. Do you want to live with Bob? No, I'm so tired of it. Okay, is there any intimacy? Well, there hasn't been intimacy for 10 years, Greg. You know, it's like, okay, so there's no love, there's no connection, there's no intimacy. Do you think maybe you and Bob have reached a point where you need to set each other free, you know, like you need to go and live your life? No, I couldn't do that. It's like, why not? Well, God hates divorce. The Bible says that God's against divorce. It's like, what? And God's for withholding intimacy from your spouse, hating being around your spouse, loathing your spouse, resenting it. Yeah, God's for all of that as long as we stay together. You just go like, see what she was attached to? She's attached to the idea of what a Christian woman should do.
Got it.
Proverbs 31. You know what I mean? So I'll live in complete dysfunction,
Yeah.
whilst it doesn't violate my sense of good Christian womanhood, right? Even if the dynamic that I'm living in doesn't look anything like good Christian womanhood.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was to get a divorce, that would shift my identity. So I have to stay in the relationship with Bob, because my relationship with Bob is an identity marker about me being a loving, long-suffering wife whose righteousness might convert my husband one day. You just go, God, it's so convoluted. It's like, you guys need to leave each other. Bob, you need to have an affair. You know, like I never said that. You know,
Could you imagine going to the pastor? It's like, you know what?
I've just met with Ethel, and I really think you should be going to the social on Friday
Do you know
night.
what would solve this? Infidelity. Like,
yeah. Like, I never said that.
God's all for it so long as you stay together.
I mean, for you Christians out there, you're thinking I'm horrible now, but the reality was, you know, you see that she's attached to this. She's staying in the relationship with Bob not because there's any love or intimacy or connection,
yes,
or shared life with Bob, but because the marriage is an identity marker around her identity of being a good Christian woman.
And in that way, you're not actually. I mean, if there are any Christians listening, I think that we would probably classify that as adhering to a religious doctrine or dogma as opposed to actually embodying those faith principles, right?
Well, yeah, for sure. You know, for sure, there's no apology there. You know, the divorce rate when I was back in ministry, the divorce rate amongst Christians was the same as it was in the secular world.
Yeah,
50%.
Yeah.
So it's not like Christians had a moratorium on keeping relationships together, right?
Yeah.
So if you think that you did, good luck with that, but you don't. And like I said, I probably dealt with, you know, more divorces than I care to remember. But always one of the things that was hardest with helping people in that system deal with divorce was they saw it as a failure of their Christianity. They saw it as a failure of their faith. So the most central thing in their identity was their faith. And they saw that divorce was a black mark against your faith.
So what about, like, if we take this example out of Christianity, in the secular world, what would that look like? Like staying in a marriage that's dysfunctional for the kids, or I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. In latter mentoring that wasn't pivoting around, say, religious beliefs and convictions, people would say, "Yeah, I'm going to stay in I'm staying in the relationship for the kids."
Yeah,
and you'd be going, "Really?" Because again, now what the person is saying is, I'm staying in the relationship because I've got this attachment to an idea of what good parenting is, right? And so the attachment stops me actually pursuing what I know. I know in my heart the relationship's over, but I'm still a parent and I still have to stay because of the parenting role.
Yeah.
And I always used to say really simply to those situations, and still do, is, are the kids better served by you functionally and appropriately leaving, or are they served by you maintaining a facade of connectedness when there is no connectedness? Like, are you going to hollow out the institution of having a partner or the idea of having a partner by basically having an empty relationship? And the kids look at that and go, that doesn't really seem very close, you know? But again, what's in play is this idea of an identity marker. You know, this relationship is feeding something about who I see myself as.
Yeah. And then, like, I really want to apply this to the job situation because I feel like this is where I can relate to it. And with the job, is it about an identity marker? Because, I mean, I think for a lot of people, a job is how you make a living and how you, like, but there's not identity in making a living.
Well, I think the dynamic shifts a little bit here.
Okay.
With the job piece, because I think that this is one of the classic myths that people have bought lock, stock and barrel. And that is that if I follow my heart, that means that I'm signing up for bankruptcy and ineffectiveness. You know, it's okay for you, Bello. Oh, it wasn't. It was unbelievably hard for me to shift out of, I would say that I live in what I would call an artisan's modality now. I live as an artist. I create stuff, I write, I sell books, I sell courses, I live as an artist. Do you know what I mean? With everything that means, right? But in order to live like that, I've had to renovate my whole life. You know what I mean? Like if you ever want me to come and mentor you, don't expect me to pull up in a Lexus or a bloody Mercedes or a BM.
I love that the Lexus was the fanciest car that you can think of off the bat.
It's the closest one that I think if I was going to buy a nice car, that would be the closest one, because I know that Bloss is never letting me have a Mercedes, right? So it's like I'm going to be pulling up in a car that's done 300,000 Ks, and, you know, because in order to have the life that I had, it's like, well, there's no room. There's no room for a $100,000 car or an $80,000 car or a $70,000 car, let alone a $120,000 car. Like, there's no room for that, you know. And so what that required me to do was to realize that this is the way that I was compelled to live. And then and it's my favorite saying, you cut your cloth according to the way that you're meant to be living, you know. So you go, okay, so everything has to simplify, you know, and you make it work. You find a way to make it work, you know, and you do what our grandparents' generation was like, you know, my grandparents' generation, you know, grandma and grandpa's first table was a box with a tablecloth over it, you know, and a couple of camp chairs, you know, and we live in a world now which is so commodified that we go, I could never do that. You know, yeah, you could. Depends on what's your priority. And I'm not saying that if you leave your work and you go and follow your heart, you better go and find a good box on the side of the street.
I was going to say that's like a really
and ask grandma for a table.
That's a really unsatisfying answer. You know, like, just follow your heart, get a box.
But what I am saying is, in the early days, you might have less than what you did in that other space. You might have less capacity, less disposable income, all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, I am infinitely more successful now than I was.
Yeah.
Staying in roles that were ill-suited to who I am at a heart level. I perform infinitely better now. I'm much more productive. I'm much more happy, compelling, engaged, thoughtful, alive inwardly, sharper mentally, more emotionally regulated, less competitive and egoistic. You know what I mean? So the move to alignment with your heart has so many benefits, which will over a period of time create so much value in your own inner life that will spill out. I always think that creativity is a spilling out of inner substance. So creativity isn't a grasping at trying to make something happen, which so often feels like people's lives. Creativity is I'm aligned and my heart connects me to my essence, and then out of that I speak and I create and I express, you know, and that expression is priceless, you know. Um, and so the myth that if I follow my heart, I'm going to become unproductive and unsustainable. No, you may go through a season of having to cut your cloth to fit your table, so to speak. Um, but reality is you will be more productive.
Mm-hmm.
You will be more compelling.
Mm-hmm.
You will be more fruitful,
Mm-hmm.
more creative.
This is like I've got a friend who is an artist who their background is in sort of visual merchandising, high up in the fashion world kind of thing, and then left it because they really just wanted to pursue art.
Yeah.
Um, and so went and got a qualification and studied it, and then, you know, oscillated between, you know, how am I going to make this work financially? And so tried out several jobs and got into those jobs that were more corporate.
Yeah.
And could do the job really easily, but just felt like this is so not me. And I remember meeting with them at the time that they were in those
Yeah.
jobs, and they were just like, this is just not, this feels awful. Like, I hate doing this because this isn't, I want to do my art. I want to go back and do that. And so has really in earnest pursued
That.
their art this year. And, you know, they're working, you know, doing some, you know, part-time retail work on the side, which is such a you know, that's so different to what they could be doing and what they were doing.
Yeah.
But now has the room and freedom to pursue.
Yeah, because they come alive, right?
Yes,
they
and
come
they're
alive
making
inwardly.
like patterns and they're brainstorming and they're,
Yeah,
you know,
because that just feeds itself.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I remember one of my I remember sitting with my best mate over lunch, and he was recounting a story of the first job that he got when he graduated from university. So he did economics at university and he graduated and he got a job with one of the big four banks. And he got a job as a product line manager, like he was going to take care of a particular product the bank had. And what they wanted to do is that they wanted to attract young people into the branch so that young people would open up these accounts and they would increase that. They would increase their share of young people in that particular space. And with the idea that if you get the young account and they bank with you their whole life, is you've got them, you know, you've got them for life. So anyway, so he thought, okay, well, I'll do this. So he went to a local surf shop and said, you know, look, so we're trying to do this. You know, do you reckon we're going, you know, like for the first X number of these accounts, they're going to go into a raffle and someone's going to win a bunch of stuff. Would you be happy to be part of that? And we'll promote you. And so we got a surfboard and a skateboard and a BMX bike, and he set them up in the corner, you know, of the bank, and said, the first people to sign up with this can win these prizes, you know. And it worked a treat. Like, you know, the word got round that there was a surfboard and a bike and a bunch of other things that people really wanted, maybe a PlayStation back then or a Nintendo, going back to the dinosaur age, you know, maybe a couple of table tennis bats, you know, whatever it was. And he signed up a truckload of accounts.
Yeah.
And then,
hell yeah, and then young people want.
Yeah, and then some of the older clients who used to keep coming into the bank, because this is back in the days where people went to the bank and queued up. Some of the older clients complained and said, "What's all this nonsense in the corner? And it's taking up space, and you've removed seats." And so the bank manager came up to him and said, "Get rid of all that stuff." And he said, "I can't. It's part of a raffle." And the bank manager said, "No, we're not doing it like that. You're not doing it like that. That's not what we do." He goes, "Okay." So he went and got rid of it all, gave it all back, and left the bank that day.
Right.
Because he just goes, I can't work with people like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like I will not give my life energy to this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it won't happen. And I remember asking another friend, you know, where I was explaining some complicated thing where I was twisting myself to stay in, I was twisting myself to stay in institutional religion, working with very difficult situations. And one of my closest friends just said, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I need to do this. I need to make this work, like, and I said the classic thing that maybe my parents might have said to me many, many times is like, sometimes you just got to do what you don't want to do. This guy just looked at me and he goes, why? Why? Why are you doing something that you don't want to do?
Yeah.
And I said, well, come on. You've had times when you do what you don't want to do. And he just looks at me and goes, no. And I go, you can't think of one time where you did something that you didn't want to do. And he goes, like, maybe the HSC, like maybe an exam at uni, but no, not really.
Really?
And it astounded me, because what it said to me was, this person was so centered, and they're one of my closest friends. They were so centered in themselves that this idea that I stretch myself to do stuff that has nothing to do with me was like to them, that was complete foolishness.
Right.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And then I had another one. These are all three people in what I would call my crew, the three or four guys who are the closest to me. Another one just said to me when I was also complaining about a workplace situation that I was involved in. He just looked at me and he goes, these places aren't here to affirm you, don't you? I think I've shared that with you before.
Yeah, I like that.
I was like, I kind of went, well, wait a second. And the message that he was kind of saying to is like, these places don't care about your heart.
Mm-hmm.
They're not here for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you kind of invest so much worrying about these places?
Yeah.
They're not worried about you.
Yeah.
You're a commodity. You're a machine part to them. When you're gone,
yeah.
when you're gone, they're going to collapse.
Yeah.
And they're never going to be the same as what they were, right?
Yeah, because that always happens.
They're going to close their doors.
They're like, oh my God.
Like the final email is going to go out.
Yes.
Bello left. And so, folks.
Shut it down.
So, folks.
Shut it down.
Yeah. We'll be paying redundancies because Bello's gone, and, Christianity in Australia will never be the same. Bello's left the building. It's like, dude, you're not Elvis. No one gives a shit.
Yeah.
You're out.
Totally.
There's no big announcement. You're just going to hop in the lift and go downstairs.
Yeah.
Put your box of stuff in
Whatever
the boot,
it is. Yeah.
drive home.
Yeah.
Leave the box there for 2 months, and then your wife's going to go, can you chuck that rubbish out?
Yeah.
And that's it.
I love hearing what you're saying. I'm on board. I agree.
However.
But I feel like I'm searching for, or not grasping for, but I feel like in all of this, I'm searching for a clear action point or a clear resolution. Like, it feels unresolved in that, I'm just trying to think back to when I was in places and I felt like I didn't belong there. And I, going back to the theme of the podcast, what if there's one area where I feel like I'm not living in accordance with my heart? I don't think that what we're saying is quit your job.
We might be. We might be saying quit your job, quit your relationship. If you're not aligned with your heart, the single imperative is to get aligned with your heart. And if that means you quit your job, leave your religion, separate from your parents, leave your partner,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Do what you got to do to get aligned with your heart.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I hear that, for me, it makes sense because I've done it. As in, like, I can't live any other way. Like, I have to because I will not, like, the internal violence of not following your heart is intolerable for me.
Well, it's self-betrayal.
But then, if I think that I'm trying to sort of act on behalf of the questioning listener, then it's like, I feel like there's such a strong kickback.
Yeah, because we're looking at this revolutionary. When we say leave your job, we're looking at it as a revolution. Write that note now, go into your boss and drop that resignation on his table, and you're out this afternoon. No, it doesn't have to be that. Like it wasn't that for me. You know, leaving is this point at which you go, oh, okay, I see it. Now, here's the thing that allows you to take an evolutionary approach. The evolutionary approach is not like, just go and blow the building up now. The evolutionary approach is going, oh, I'm out. I'm done. I'm finished in this space. Okay. And it's the realization that the answer to where isn't in that space.
Yeah.
Like the logic of what's next.
Yeah.
And the common sense and the reason and the insight and the clarity about what's next doesn't exist in that confined box. It exists outside the box.
Totally.
So if you stand in the box and say, I can't leave the box until I have all the answers, then you never leave the box.
Yeah, because you're still finding your identity within. This goes back to the identity piece, right?
You're still finding your identity. You're still fearful of what it means to live outside of that. But the answers are all outside of that. It's like if this is the Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgees where, like in Lord of the Rings, the very first thing is like Samwise goes, if I take one more step, this will be the furthest I've ever been outside the Shire. And they step outside the Shire. And it's not all easy what happens. They're going to go on a hero's journey. They're going to confront all sorts of demons and crazy stuff. Their life is going to be threatened, no doubt. So we're not saying when you step outside the box, it's easy. Like we're saying, you might have to cut your cloth to fit your table. You might have to change your life. You might have to go without. There's a bunch of things that might happen. Or you might be ridiculously successful and just, all of a sudden, you've got more of everything than you ever thought you could. The outcome is irrespective. What is imperative is the connection to heart. That's the most important thing. That I get connected to my heart. And then the logic of what happens with that connection exists out there. It doesn't exist in here.
Yeah.
Because what my heart's saying is, I am not playing in with that box.
Yeah.
So the degree to which you stay in the box, the heart goes, I'm not releasing anything.
Totally.
So you don't just have to blow the box up. You just may evolve yourself out of that. Maybe that takes a month. Maybe it takes 6 months. Maybe you look at it and go, in a year's time, I will not be back here again.
Totally. And I think that this is where that awareness is such a pivotal first step, right? Because you realize that, oh, this isn't congruent. I'm going to need to shift out of this space at some point.
Completely. So like for me in my life, it was like after I'd left ministry, which was a very long time ago now, I then had a whole kind of career in corporate. And then there got to a period of time when I had kind of had, my 8-year sabbatical, which was not a sabbatical. It was just, an isolation really, where I knew during that period of time that I would not go back to corporate. But then I got a call from a friend of mine who was head of HR for the local local health district. And she said, listen, can you come and do an intervention with one of our units? I said, okay. I'll come and do that. But because I knew in my heart that I was never going back to corporate, I got a copy of the Tao Te Ching. I wore linen pants and a pair of loafers and a T-shirt to a meeting with these people. They must have been expecting some corporate coach or mentor to walk through the door. And what they got was deconstructed hippy-dippy Bello, who sat there for 2 hours reading them the Tao Te Ching and talking about how they could be a good leader in their thingo.
Yeah.
So I never did go back to corporate where I put on my R.M. Williams and my moleskins and my business blue shirt and a nice jacket and turn up looking like something that I'm not. Because the person who could live in corporate and do that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, totally.
So what happens when you shift and align with your heart is you come home to who you really are. Who you really are can go anywhere you want, as long as it's not compromising who you really are.
Yeah.
So who you really are can go and work in the university. As long as Jess goes and works in the university, But if Jess has to be something that she's not, or has to become dependent on the unity for her identity, then she can't do that.
Yeah.
So there's a fair bit in this, right?
There's a lot in this.
There's a lot in this. And I think a lot of people will be saying, you haven't necessarily made this any clearer. But I think the take-home points are kind of simple. You'll struggle to leave, as you said, if there's an attachment. If it's an identity attachment, you're sourcing your identity through these things. Your heart's saying, hey, listen, we're done here. If that place supplies you identity, if you're attached to it and it supplies you identity, it's difficult. If it supplies you things that you need to prop up your identity, cash, prestige, busyness, then that'll be hard too, right? But all in all, as I said at the beginning, you're way ahead of the game because there's a part of you that knows you can't be there.
Totally.
And that's the starting point of true alignment. Yeah.
Great. And I think too, like, it's also worth mentioning on the back of this that these are all very, very nuanced depending on the individual journey as well.
Yeah, nothing prescriptive in what we're saying,
No.
as in, like a one size fits all.
Yeah. But if you have listened and you've got questions, reach out. We've got several people who, reach out after listening to this stuff, and we love hearing from you. So do reach out, ask questions.
And our book, Way of the Heart book,
book.
I'm not trying to flog it off, but there's a whole chapter that deals with this.
Yeah.
It deals with the myth that if I follow my heart, I'm going to become bankrupt. There's whole poems in there that deal with that. So I know that this is a pushback that people say, well, you don't really get it. It's like, no, we really do get it.
Mm-hmm.
We're not pretending that this is easy. But we have gone into detail with this, and we have embedded this in a lot of the stuff that we offer. So if you're interested, and this is a real pain point for you, don't just bury it. That's a great way to do untold damage to yourself internally. Lean into it and reach out to us, and we're more than happy to help.
Great.
All right.
Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
See you.
Thank you for listening to Heart Riffing. If today's conversation resonated, you can find more of our work, including courses, mentoring, and workshops, at www.wayoftheheart.com.au or on our Instagram, Way of the Heart Official. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reflections, or questions, so please always feel free to message or comment. We look forward to seeing you next time.